Okay, hello guys, this is Konrad with Aurora DSP here, and today we're gonna be focusing on the newly released Laboga DS Suite plugin from Aurora and how you can use it in your mixes. Let's get started. Okay, so that was the demo of the plugin being used in a mix, and I hope you guys liked it. Now let's see what's going on behind the scenes of the mix. Okay, so let's start with the main chorus over here, which is the Laboga plugin itself. As you can see, I have two pairs of rhythm guitars over here. The main one is going through the Laboga DS40 head, and as you can see, I have it dialed in quite a bit. I have almost cranked the presence to the maximum. I have a little bit of a bass boost, cutting some mids and cutting some treble. I'm not using too much volume of the actual amp because I don't want the power tube distortion to be too present. I want, for this type of tone, I want more preamp distortion, which I'm utilizing using this knob. Using the drive knob, obviously I'm using the distorted channel, and I'm using the internal booster of the amp. Speaking of boosting, I am also using the modeled overdrive that is available on the pedal section, and I am using the EQ, cutting some low mid-range around 400. The cab, I am using the oversized 2x12 cab with the 57. It's placed right in between the cone and the dust cap. Sort of a classic placement of a 57, almost everyone does it. And on the master EQ, on the graphical EQ that is available, I have cut a little bit around 400. I have cut some whistly frequencies in the high mid-range, and I have boosted a little bit of 14K for that sizzly top end. For the main guitars, I'm also using the GateMate, the split gate plugin from Aurora. The pre section allows you to denoise your guitar and catches the information of your actual DI and the dynamics of your DI, but you get to gate the actual thing post amp, post distortion, so you don't get any nasty interference or anything, and the gating is super precise. So if you haven't checked out the GateMate, that's a side note, you really should. And for the low control, I'm using a separate plugin from Black Salt Audio, dialed in like this, catching the low end below 250. The other pad of rhythms is a more like an accent thing. This pair of rhythms is just playing the single notes, sounds like this. And here I am using the DS100 head, the 100-watt head, for a little bit more headroom. Very similar settings, a lot of presence, cutting mid-range and the treble on the actual cabinet. This time we're using the 4x12 oversize Laboga cabinet with a 57, almost at the same place as on the 40-watt head, but yeah, right here where we are catching a little bit more of the cone than the dust cap, so it's a little bit darker. It supplements the main rhythm tone pretty nicely, if I can say so myself. Adding some air in this section. Right here I have 510 EQ engage, cutting some 250, 500, 1.5 and 3K, and boosting some air in the upper frequencies, and a similar thing going on here, cutting some mid-range, some whistly frequencies, and some of that high end. And the guitars together sound like this. Let's move on to the bass. Bass sounds like this. And if you are an Aurora plugin enthusiast, and I hope you are if you're watching this video, you might recognize this tone, but if you're not, let's see. I have a little bit of OTT, aggressive compression, upward compression, boosting some of the detail of the DI signal from the bass. And everything, of course, goes into the Mammoth, which is the flagship Aurora bass plugin, which is sick and works on everything. It's insane. I am using Christian Cole's preset called the Dangle, but I am using a different preamp. I have messed around with the gain amount. I've changed the IR. I think the company is called Shiftline. I've changed the input dialed in the plugin so it doesn't smash the bass too much. It works really nicely. Of course, after this, Low Control by Black Salt Audio works really nice to control the low end. And a sub cut on a Melda EQ. Okay, so the drums, my personal favorite when it comes to mix breakdowns. The drums sound like this. The heart of everything when it comes to the drums is GGD One Kid Wonder Aggressive Rock. Really nice plugin. I am using parallel processing and master EQ. I am triggering the kick. I'm using actually a different kick. The one from Modern and Massive, the Yamaha Recording Custom. Really nice, really beefy, big sound with a ton of sub frequencies. That goes into a distressor-inspired plugin from T-Rex. I really like it. On the 2:1 ratio, slow attack, fast-ish release, or a fast release, let's say. That really ties in the sound together. You would think that if a sample is mix ready, you don't need to compress it, but I find that in the context, if you want something to sound pretty natural, you want to compress it because the first kick makes the compressor react, the second makes it react differently. Like if you have a string of kicks going together, the compressor is going to react differently than if you had printed compressor hits on every single kick individually, if that makes sense. Some EQ, cutting some really low frequencies because there is a ton of sub in that sample. Cutting some 200 makes the kick sound deeper and a little bit more metal, if that makes sense. If you can't get your kicks to sound like beefy and deep, that's where you want to look for. Boosting a little bit around 1K for that presence, cutting some harshness around 2.5K, boosting a little bit around 7K, and a low pass at 10. Because I don't want my kicks too bright. And that goes into a clipper, which tames the peaks a little bit. Snare drum sounds like this. Sounds like a machine gun, for a good reason. Of course I'm gating it. It's a sample, it doesn't have any bleed, but I do have quite a bit of processing, and the actual tail of the sample gets really loud when I don't have a gate, so I use a gate. Transient shaper makes your drummer hit harder. Distressor style compression, almost the same settings as on a kick. Because I don't use a high ratio here, I get to push the actual model pretty hard and get some saturation out of the compressor. More saturation only on the high end, there's nothing on the low band, only on the high end. To really smash that high end, I'm mixing it in and turning the dynamics to far right. It's pretty much parallel compression on the snare itself. After that, a limiter. I don't know, about 1 to 2 dB of gain reduction to just tame the peak a little bit. After that, a clipper. So I'm able to push the snare drum even higher in the mix. And after that, I am EQing. I like EQing post all of this processing, but that's my personal preference. You don't have to do it that way. Boosting the fundamental at 180, cutting below that, cutting some boxy mid-range. This cut is really interesting because if you want a very articulate, cracky snare, you don't want to cut here. See how much spike there is in this frequency range, like around 3.5K. But if you want more of a lush, like a less present snare, you want to cut here a little bit. It sounds really cool. Presence boost at around 7K as with the kick, and a low pass. I find that a lot of samples sound more real when you low pass them, when they're not as bright. If you have real drums, you're not able to push the high end as much because you have cymbal bleed messing with you. So I low pass my samples so they don't sound as fake. Toms are interesting. On the toms, I have a transient shaper. This is the leftover from my mixing template that I've used a long time ago. So right now I would have used the kilohertz one. There's nothing special about this one. And Saturn, a leftover from my template that I used to use when I didn't have Saturn 2. I'm splitting the toms into multiple frequency ranges that represent different characteristics of the actual tone. And here, on the very low end, I'm not saturating too much. I am pulling the dynamics back so the sustain isn't as strong. Pulling the low end down a little bit. On the mid-range, I'm also not saturating too much. Just pulling the mid-range a whole bunch, like almost 7 dB, 6.5 dB actually. Because on the toms, between, I would say, 200 and like 800, like in that range you have the boxiness and the nasty frequencies of the toms, so I like to cut that. Upper mid-range, not saturating a little bit more, and the very high end I am saturating quite a lot. So high end happens above 2K, and the upper mid-range happens between 800 and 2K. And that goes into a parallel bus, which is supercharger smashing the drums and saturating them, and it's dialed in at 27%. See, when I bypass the plugin, it really loses a lot of the oomph, a lot of the balls of the drums. So use parallel compression and saturation in your drums. Overheads are pretty simple. It's a great sounding library, so I don't have to do much. I'm doing some OTT. It's a really cool plugin to use on the overheads. The upward compression really brings out the detail on the body of the cymbals, and the downward compression pushes them a little bit down, and then I'm EQing them just a little bit. Normally, I would have high-passed the cymbals, but as you can see in the frequency spectrum even, and as you can hear, there is nothing really happening below 200 Hz. Like, almost, okay? Almost. So it doesn't really mess with my shells. On the room mics, obviously I'm smashing the living hell out of the rooms for this type of drum sound. Supercharger on the slam settings, saturating it a little bit, brightening it up. Really cool plugin. You can dial in the sound of a drum within a couple of tweaks. And cutting some unnecessary frequencies, some 4K, 1K, 200, and a pretty strong high pass at 160. And the drums sound like this. Really happy with this drum sound. And yeah, on the instrumental bass, I have a bass compressor that knocks down the snare and kicks into the mix. See, it's reacting almost only to the snare and kick hits, pushes them down in the mix, so they're still present, they're still above everything, but they don't punch as much, if that makes sense. It's a very popular mixing technique recently, and I really dig it. So if you haven't, try it out. Some bass compression from Joel Wanasek's BG Mix plugin. on the nickel transformer setting with the extra exciter and the magic stuff. Doesn't do a whole much, but yeah, the no small time setting is adds some really cool stuff to the mix. On the actual master bus, I'm doing something controversial because I'm using OTT, but only the upward part of the mix. So because I want to bring out the detail of the actual recording, the quiet parts, to bring up the actual loudness of the mix without smashing the transients up top. So I'm using a little bit of OTT, some GoFuzz, a magical plugin that levels out your frequency spectrum a little bit, Oxford Inflator, a classic plugin that makes your stuff louder. Louder is better, obviously. Take that with a grain of salt, of course. But yeah, it does some wave shaping that allows for more volume without destroying your peaks, which is cool, which is what we want. Some Neve style saturation. Again, on this demo, I'm being pretty aggressive with my processing. I probably wouldn't use that on every mix, but it sounds cool over here. JST maximizer for some clipping and some bass enhancement, obviously. I'm clipping a little bit. The reason why I'm using a clipper before my final limiter is I don't want to work the final limiter too hard. Because if you use too much, if you push it too hard, you're going to destroy your low end. It's not going to be as punchy. You're not going to have as strong of a transient as if you clip them beforehand. And the final thing is T-Rox 1, a limiter with a compressor thing, I think. Compressing it a little bit with the push knob. And doing about 2 dB of gain reduction on the final limiter. And that's it. That's the whole mix. Okay guys, so that's an example of a mix with the new Aurora DS plugin. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, there is more videos coming. Of course, try the Laboga DS Suite plugin for free for yourself. It's a really great plugin. I really recommend you guys try it. See you guys next time. Cheers.